Hello friends, this video on gravitation part 8 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So have till now discussed about gravitation. So in the second half of this lesson, we are going to spend some time on thrust and pressure. So you might be thinking, why are we going to study about thrust and pressure? So let us have a look at that. Why do we study thrust and pressure? Have you ever observed some small things around you? For example, have you ever observed that if you look at a car or if you look at a small vehicle like car where you have thinner tires, but when you compare it with some huge vehicles like a truck or a bus, you see the tires which they have are very thick. So have you ever noticed that? I think most of you would have. Now, did you ever think what is the reason behind that? That the heavier the vehicle, the thicker the tire. Why is that? Okay. Again, you would have seen that not all animals can very easily walk or run over sand. But camels can do that very easily. Camels can walk comfortably over sand. They can even run over sand. So what is that? What is that special in the feet of the camel? And why is it difficult for us? Even if we walk on a plain road and if we compare to sand, you will see that over sand it becomes very difficult to walk. Again, you would have seen that things which are used to pierce, for example, you have a needle. It will have a very sharp edge. When you compare a spoon and a knife, which would you opt to cut vegetables? Definitely a knife. Why? Because knife has got a sharp edge. Similarly, when you look at a needle has a very sharp tip, because of which you are able to make holes into things, or you are able to stitch clothes with the help of needles, right? So these are some of the things which we have seen. We know that these things are true. But why these things are happening? I mean, why is it that things which are used for cutting objects have sharp edges? Why is it that heavier vehicles have thicker tires? How camels can walk easily over sand, but it is not possible for everybody else? So these are some of the things which remain unanswered without the knowledge of thrust and pressure. Now, why are we talking about thrust and pressure in this lesson is because thrust and pressure are in a way related to gravity. So they are also related to gravitational pull of the earth. So you will come to know that as we go ahead. As we go ahead a few slides, you will get to know why are we talking about thrust and pressure in this lesson. So let us first understand what is thrust. Thrust is nothing but a force acting on an object perpendicular to its surface. Okay? So it is a force which is acting on an object perpendicular to its surface. So since it is a force, therefore the SI unit will be the SI unit of force, that is Newton. Let us consider this example. Let us suppose you have a table and you have placed this lamp over the table. So this object which is placed on the table, do you think that there is a force which is acting on this object? Yes, there is a force because of the gravitational pull, right? And what is that force? The force which is exerted by the gravity is nothing but your force is the weight of the object, that is mg, right? That is what we talked about when we discussed about the gravitational pull of the earth, when we discussed about the weight of an object. So this force is acting on this object. Now this force is acting on the object. So this is one object and this is another object. So this force is also acting on the surface of this table. So that means this lamp which is there, the weight of the lamp is nothing but a force which is actually acting on the table. So that means this force is acting perpendicular to the surface of the table. So this force is known as thrust. So thrust is nothing but a different name for force acting perpendicular to a surface, right? So we see that this is the thrust. So similarly, this would be a better example to understand. Have you ever seen in your schools that you will have the notice boards, right? those velvety boards on which you stick papers. Now, do you think that papers get stick on the velvety boards by itself? No, right? You make use of these kind of pins, right? So these pins are used to pin the paper on those bulletin boards or notice boards, whatever you call it, right? So how do you actually pin them up? You have to apply some force perpendicular to the surface of the board, right? What do you actually do? You actually put some force over this pin, right? So that means you are applying a force in a direction perpendicular to the surface of the board. So this force which you are applying is nothing but thrust. So thrust is a force which is acting on an object perpendicular to its surface, right? So I hope you're clear with thrust. See, these are not very complicated things. These are all simple small things, but just that when you know these things, you're able to answer so many things which are happening around you, right? Now let us see what is pressure. Now that we have understood thrust, we are capable of understanding pressure, correct? So what is pressure? Pressure is defined as thrust per unit area. So that means thrust is just the force which is acting on any object. Now the effect of the force, the effect which that force causes, it changes with the area of the object. So that is what we will see now. That means even if you apply same amount of force, let us suppose you apply same amount of force on two objects which have different areas, the effect of the force will be different for the two objects. So that means even though the force is the same, but since the area changed, therefore the effect of that force also changed. So this effect of the force is nothing but pressure, and that is why we define pressure as force per unit area, or here thrust per unit area. Right? Now SI unit of pressure is Pascal or Newton per meter square. So how do we define pressure? It is generally denoted by a capital P. We write it as thrust per unit area, or sometimes we also write it as force per unit area. So this is how we define pressure, right? I'm sure you are not very clear with it till now. Now let us look at this example. Once you understand the example, you will understand what am I trying to convey. Let us take the example of the school bags. Here you can see picture of two different bags. The first bag, what is the difference between the two bags? Can you notice? The first bag has got a thicker strap, whereas the second bag has got a very thin strap. Everything else remains the same for both the bags. Let us suppose both the bags have got some heavy books, your maths, physics, chemistry, biology, English. You have got so many books stuffed inside these bags. So maybe the bag weighs around some 3 to 4 kgs. So both the bags are having the same amount of stuffs. That means the mass of both the bags are the same. Weight of both the bags are the same. Okay, the only difference is that for one the strap is thicker, for the other the strap is thinner. Correct? So what happens in this case? When the strap is thicker, your area, but now if a small boy carries this bag, then he carries this bag, which will give him more comfort. I mean, you try it for yourself. If you take a bag which is loaded with lot of stuff, it is quite heavy, but it has a thicker strap, you feel more comfortable, right? But if it has got a very thin strap, as soon as you put it over your shoulders start aching because of that thin strap. But if you look at it, if you compare the two situations, in both the cases, you are carrying the same amount of load. The amount of things which are present in the bag is same in both the cases. It is just the area of the strap which is changing. So what is happening in this case? The area which is in contact with the body, that area is more. In this case, the area is less. Now, as per definition of pressure, but the force is same in both the cases, because force is nothing but the force is by virtue of the weight of the bag. So now mass of the bag is same in both the cases. So weight of the bag is same. Therefore, the force is same in both the cases. So as area increases, so this pressure will decrease. Correct? So in this case, the pressure is less. Whereas in this case, the pressure is more. So whenever the pressure is more, you will feel the pain. Pressure is the effect of force. That means because of the force, whatever the effect is, that is what we feel. So we actually feel the effect of the force. So we actually feel the pressure. So the pressure is more if you have a thinner strip. Right? So now you understand why you generally get your school bags with thicker strips. Correct? Now let us look at the next example, the same bulletin board example. Let us suppose in this bulletin board example, okay, now instead of using the pins, if you try to apply the force with your thumb, what will happen? Will the paper stick on the board? It will not stick. Why? Because when you are using your thumb, so one option is you use your thumb directly. You press the paper with the thumb. There is no pin at all. The second option is you take a pin and then you press the pin with your thumb. In both the cases, let us suppose you are applying the same amount of force. Force is same in both the cases, because in both the cases you are actually applying the force with your thumb. So you are applying the same amount of force in both. But in the first case, when you are actually putting your thumb in contact with the board, the area is more, because area of the thumb is more when compared to the area of the pin, because pin will have a very thin, it will have a very sharp tip. So if you look at the tip of the pin, that is extremely small. So the area is very, very small. Correct? Now when the area is so small, the pressure is very large. But in this case, the area is large, therefore the pressure is less. And what is pressure? It is the effect of the force. So whatever force I am applying, the effect of the force is actually the result of that force, right? So I am giving same force, but in case of thumb, the pressure which is felt by the board or the notice board is very less. But in case of the pin, the pressure felt by the notice board is very large, and because of that high pressure, the pin goes inside the board, but the thumb does not go inside the board. Right? So now you understand that as area, even though you are applying the same amount of force, but if area changes, the effect of the force also changes. And that is why there are few things which are designed in that way, so that they can apply more pressure on certain things. Now we will talk. Thank you. Please visit examfear.com to watch free educational videos, try free online tests, get the best quality study materials, study from the best tutors and mentors, and much more. Thank you once again.